Before the college entrance examination, I secretly took away the love letter that the school hunk wrote to his first love, which resulted in the two of them not being able to be together. She hated me for the rest of her life. Even after finding out that I had a secret crush on her, she said that I was so jealous and scheming and malicious that she would never like me. Later, we died in a car accident. Before dying, she said that if we could start over, she begged me not to destroy the good relationship between her and the school hunk again, as she wished. When starting over, I didn't take away the love letter. Then, in order to enter the same school as the school hunk, she gave up the multiple choice questions and the science comprehensive test. After the college entrance examination results came out, Snow and Leo got together. At the graduation party, her romantic act of giving up the multiple choice questions and the science comprehensive test for love was widely spread, and people called her the pure love warrior. I sat in a dim corner with a glass of juice in my hand, watching the two people surrounded by the crowd in the middle, and took a sip of the juice in the glass gently. My friend Han beside me couldn't understand it but was deeply shocked. Is she crazy? She cut off her own future with her own hands? Just for this uncertain future with Leo? Yes, this time, she chose Leo between her future and Leo. In the previous life, I secretly took away the love letter before the college entrance examination to help her choose her future, but what I got was her hatred for the rest of her life. Even after finding out that I had a secret crush on her, she said to me with great disgust, "Ryan, I'm not interested in people who are extremely jealous and scheming and malicious. Your liking makes me sick." In fact, I didn't hide the love letter from her. Instead, on the night after the college entrance examination ended, I returned the love letter to her. But when she took the love letter to find Leo, what she got was a refusal. "Snow, our grades are so different. We won't be in the same school at all. How can we be together? For years of a long-distance relationship? What I need is a girlfriend who can accompany me anytime and anywhere. Can you do that?" Snow, who was in a daze, gave me a cold look when she came back. The next day, her parents hurriedly came to me and said that Snow planned to change the target university that had been confirmed and asked me to persuade her. I wasn't too surprised. But before I could say anything when I found Snow, her eyes fell on me and she sneered, "What? Taking the love letter away once wasn't enough, Ryan. Do you want to destroy it again?" Standing at the stairway where the wind was blowing, it was strangely cold even though it was a sunny day. I looked down at her, who was decadent and irritable, and only said one sentence, "Snow, it took you 12 whole years to get to this point." Finally, with her parents threatening with their lives, Snow gave up changing her application. And she didn't get together with Leo either. Since then, I became the chief culprit who prevented her from being with Leo and the target of her venting her anger whenever she thought about it and felt aggrieved. Until the last moment of her life, she was still blaming me. In the bloody and pungent carriage, she begged with a hoarse voice, "If we could start over, Ryan, please don't be so self-righteous and interfere and destroy our fate again." So when I was reborn, I did as she wished. I didn't take away the love letter before the college entrance examination. Snow smoothly saw the love letter and saw the reason why Leo said that he also liked her but was worried that the gap was too big for them to be together. So he didn't respond for a long time. Then she directly cut off her own retreat without leaving any room for maneuver. She gave up the multiple choice questions and the science comprehensive test. Her score was more than 100 points lower than that in the previous life. Finally, she successfully narrowed the gap with Leo and got together with him. After several rounds of drinking, someone suddenly mentioned me with a rather emotional tone. At first, I thought it would be Ryan who would be with Snow. After all, they were childhood sweethearts and equally matched. But soon Snow herself refuted it. Probably worried that Leo would misunderstand, so she said in a rather distant way, "Just ordinary friends since childhood." I smiled silently and recited these 4 words in my mind, "Ordinary friends." But Snow was right. We did know each other since childhood. From the beginning of school to graduating from high school, we had always been in the same class. Besides my parents, Snow was probably the person who spent the longest time with me. I had seen her staying up all night to solve a problem, and she had also seen me in a miserable state when I still insisted on taking an exam with a fever of 40 degrees. No one knew better than us how much effort was needed behind easily getting into the top 3 in exams, as people said. On the day when we entered high school with the first and second highest scores in the city, Snow pointed at the first 2 photos on the college entrance examination honor roll on the publicity board and asked me, 3 years later, "It will be us here, Ryan. Are you confident?" Behind the girl were the flaming clouds at sunset in summer, intense and gorgeous. In our ears were the hoarse cicadas chirping, restless and lively. I held my books and turned my head to look at her. "Snow, it's a deal." At that time, what we saw in each other's eyes was all the longing for the future, the aspiration for our ideals, and the determination to succeed. But soon, there was an extra Leo in Snow's eyes. In that high school period when most students were working hard for their dreams with disheveled hair and a dirty face, only Leo was outstandingly handsome. At the cultural festival not long after entering school, Leo, wearing a white suit, stood in the middle of the stage, like a bright moon falling down, and the hazy halo blurred everything around him. He alone caught the eyes of everyone present. Since that night, Leo's name had spread to every class, and he became the first love in the hearts of many girls. Snow was among them. The first time I noticed something was wrong was when she came back after delivering test papers to the next class for the physics teacher. She sat in her seat with her earlobes slightly red, and she only wrote 1 question on the test paper in front of her during 4 classes of evening self-study. On the draft paper full of dense calculation formulas, there were 3 inappropriate words, Leo. Although she had crossed them out with her pen many times, it couldn't cover up the traces at all. Later, I heard that when she was delivering the test papers, she was teased by Leo from the next class. He accidentally bumped into Snow and hugged her while playing around with his friends. And Snow, who was hugged, was stunned for a moment and then just said with a straight face, "Be careful." Leo just looked at her and smiled, "Sorry, top student. Oh, and by the way, you're really good looking." Suddenly, there was a burst of jeering around them. Snow, who had always been calm, reserved, and didn't show her emotions easily, was flustered. To some extent, Snow and I had similar personalities, rational, sober, and as calm as warm water, while Leo was sentimental and passionate, just like an effervescent tablet thrown into warm water, and he was also a handsome effervescent tablet. So I wasn't surprised at all that Snow was attracted to him. Just like in many idol dramas and novels, the personalities of the male and female protagonists are often contrasting, and what they promote is that people will be attracted to those different from themselves. There are so many examples, like the rich and beautiful girl and the poor boy, the top student and the underachiever, or the good student and the hooligan. At that time, I thought that even if Snow was really attracted to him, she should always understand what was the most important thing. But she, who had always been calm, rational, and sensible, still rebelled once for Leo. I actually didn't know how she got familiar with Leo. After all, being bogged down by the heavy schoolwork every day already made me too busy to take care of other things. What I talked with her the most was the solutions to this problem, the answers to that problem, or whether she was ready for this exam. By the time I realized that she and Leo were getting closer and closer, Leo had already been skillfully calling her bookworm, top student, and Snow's reaction clearly showed that she had already gotten used to it. I began to notice that every noon Snow would leave for half an hour to tutor Leo, and every Saturday morning she would suddenly have something to do, which was to participate in the activities organized by Leo. I knew that Snow had fallen in love with him. But this didn't make me stop and focus on their gradually developing relationship. I continued to study hard with my head down. Until the national physics competition in the second year of high school, the school had to select 1 student to participate after several rounds of selection. In the final round of 5 students competing for 1 spot, Snow didn't come. Because Leo had a fever and fainted. After sending him to the hospital, at his request, Snow chose to stay and accompany him in the hospital for the whole afternoon. I didn't know how to describe my mood at that time. I only remembered that when I ran to the hospital to find her, all my emotions finally turned into a puzzled, "Snow?" She leaned against the corridor of the hospital with a calm expression and just said one sentence, "I've lived a life following the rules for so many years. I should rebel once, shouldn't I?" So she gave up the preparation that she had worked hard on for so long and forgot those nights when she had brushed up on questions even when she was sick. Looking at the clear and gentle girl in front of me at that time, I felt a sense of strangeness for a moment and even had a trace of inexplicable tears in my eyes. But I didn't say anything. However, I was very clear that Snow's behavior was not a good sign, so when she was about to face the second choice, I helped her make the choice in advance. I took away the love letter that Leo gave her on the eve of the college entrance examination. Before that, I had actually been prepared for Snow to confess her love to him after the college entrance examination and was also ready to give them my blessings. And then for them to be together. I took away the love letter that Leo gave her on the eve of the college entrance examination. Before that, I had actually been prepared for Snow to confess her love to him after the college entrance examination. In the empty classroom, he was standing beside Snow's seat, talking to his friends. The general meaning of the conversation could be summarized as follows. The reason why he got close to Snow was a bet with his friends to win over Snow, the top student in the grade. But in the process, he really fell in love with her. However, he thought that the gap was too big for them to be in the same school and didn't want a long-distance relationship. So although he knew that Snow liked him, he always emphasized that they were just classmates. Writing the love letter was to show his hope of going to the same university with her and also his intention to be with her. In the past, I could be sure that Snow wouldn't give up her future for anything or anyone, but at that moment, I wasn't sure anymore. To prevent that 1% possibility, I went in and took away the love letter after they left. Since then, whenever facing Snow's sarcasm, I would repeatedly think about whether I had really done something wrong. Once, I tried to communicate with her calmly, "Snow, even if you had seen it in advance, what could you have done? Were you really going to?" She sneered and interrupted me with great certainty, "Ryan, I would." I looked at her silently for a while and finally smiled softly. For the first time, I realized that I had indeed made a big mistake. A terribly wrong mistake. As the party was coming to an end, Leo took Snow's hand and walked up to me. With a smile in his eyes, he raised his glass towards me and said, "Ryan, you're the one who has accompanied Snow for 18 years. No matter how ordinary the relationship is, it's still different from that with others. So, you'll also give us your blessings, right?" I took a look at the girl beside him, who was wearing a white t-shirt and had bright and clear eyes, and then smiled and politely corrected him. "I didn't accompany Snow for 18 years. We just happened to be on the same road and walked together for 18 years. From now on, we'll be on different paths. Many people have already wished you happiness today. One less from me won't make a difference. I wish you a bright future." I meant it sincerely. After all, we all came from ordinary families. Who didn't study hard through the years of schooling and fight their way out for a good future? In her previous life, after Snow entered a top university, she became the favorite student of the most prestigious professor in the physics department. She got to know a group of respected teachers and made countless like-minded friends. With the best resources in the country, she advanced vigorously in her favorite physics research. The name Snow repeatedly appeared in academic journals, and she was often seen speaking eloquently at research conferences. She had a bright future ahead. The only regret was probably her first love, Leo. That was her obsession for a lifetime. At a few occasional class reunions, when people mentioned him, it was always about who he was with, who he broke up with, or which rich girl spent a fortune to confess her love to him. The last time I heard news about him was during the spring festival. He was getting married. That night, Snow got drunk as a skunk while drinking with her friends. When she came back, she knocked on the door of my house. Coincidentally, my parents weren't at home. As soon as I opened the door, she rushed in and sarcastically taunted me with a fierce look. "Ryan, you must be very happy now, right? He's getting married. Are you satisfied now?" I quietly stood beside the sofa and let her vent her emotions. Then I poured a glass of warm water for her. "Have some water." She didn't take it. Actually, after all these years, I was also tired. Looking at her gradually falling asleep after her emotional outburst, I took a blanket and casually covered her with it. After returning to my bedroom, I received some gossip news from Han, which he got through his complicated circle of friends. It said that Leo's fiancée is a newly rich woman. She fell in love with him at first sight at a friend's birthday party. Leo even had a girlfriend when he was being pursued. At first, he didn't agree, but then the newly rich woman started spending money on him until he was willing to break up with his girlfriend. I looked down at it silently. Suddenly, I really wanted to know what the final outcome would be if Snow had really given up her future for Leo back then. Originally, I thought I would never know the direction of the other choice. Unexpectedly, I went back to the past and everything started all over again. Snow finally got what she wished for. Looking at the two people who had already walked hand in hand back to the center of the crowd and were being urged by everyone to kiss, I finished drinking the juice in my glass and then turned around and left. Snow had envisioned countless times in her assumptions that even if she and Leo went to the same school, she could still reach the same height with her own abilities. In fact, nobody could know the final answer. But, Snow, I'll wait and see. Going back in time, nothing had changed except Snow's choice. I still entered the university where I had been in my previous life with the same score and was admitted to the mathematics department that I had my heart set on. During the whole holiday before leaving for school, I didn't see Snow again. Because she went on a graduation trip with Leo. I found a part-time job tutoring junior high school students. Occasionally, when I went out and ran into Snow's parents, I could see the bitter smiles on their faces when they greeted me and a few strands of gray hair among their black hair. I thought that they probably would never know why their daughter, who had never fallen out of the top 3, was so hardworking and talented, suddenly didn't perform well in the college entrance examination. They were even worried that she was too sad and would try every means to comfort her, put on a forced smile in front of her, and let her go traveling to relax. For a moment, I didn't know which would make them feel better, knowing the truth or never knowing it. But looking at them, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness in my heart. After all, they were the elders who had the most contact with me besides my parents and had watched me grow up. When I ate at Snow's house, her mother would always make sweet and sour spare ribs, which I loved the most. She knew all my tastes. She would also specifically tell Snow to take more care of me at school because I was born a few days later than Snow and not let me be bullied by other classmates. At that time, Snow, holding a piece of watermelon, replied calmly, "Don't worry. I won't let him be bullied." I had a gentle personality and good grades, so I got along quite harmoniously with my classmates. However, Snow was often left out because of her cold and indifferent personality, which was different from the lively and outgoing girls of her age. But she didn't care because she would be with me. I originally thought that we would always walk together on the road in the future. Unexpectedly, she turned around halfway. The next time I saw Snow was at the high-speed railway station on the day when I was leaving for school. In my previous life, we were in the same city. Now I was going north while she and Leo were going south. In the bustling waiting room, she and Leo were sitting together. When I passed by them, I saw that she was watching with Leo an emotional blogger on WeChat video analyzing the 10 standards for a girlfriend to love her boyfriend. Occasionally, she nodded to echo his comments. Probably because she had been playing outdoors for 2 months, her originally fair and pale complexion had darkened a lot and she had lost a lot of weight. There was a tattoo with the abbreviation Leo on her arm, and she was wearing the same couple's clothes as him. She was gradually different from the Snow in my memory. Later, when she noticed my gaze, she looked up at me. Across a row of seats, I met her gaze openly and smiled faintly as a greeting. She froze for a second, subconsciously moved the tattooed arm back a little, quickly withdrew her gaze when Leo turned his head to ask her something, and said something to him. Judging from the lip movements, it could be guessed as nothing. Just then, the train I was taking arrived. While queuing up for ticket checking until entering the station, there was a strong gaze following me from behind. I knew who it was, but I didn't look back. Later, after getting on the train and finding my seat, I received a message from Snow. Looking at the conversation that had stopped a few months ago, I was in a daze for a moment. This kind of frequency would probably become the norm in the future until the words we said on an ordinary day became the last conversation in our lives. As my thoughts came back, I took a look at her new message, which was a very short sentence. Ryan, I also wish you a bright future. Of course, I'll have a bright future. I'll step onto a new platform and see a bigger world. People around me will all be outstanding talents from all over the country. I'll enter a circle completely different from the previous one. Here, there are countless people who are hardworking and talented, and humble and capable people can be seen everywhere. Even after getting rid of the limited vision confined to one school, I'll find that Leo isn't actually overwhelmingly handsome. It's just that many people who pursue their dreams put a filter on him while hiding their own brilliance. Now, taking off the monotonous coat and going to the fields where they are good at, everyone is a shining pearl. After that, I began to be busy with professional courses, communicating with teachers and classmates about topics, and participating in various competition activities. I also went to participate in volunteer teaching, learned painting, and then drew portraits for every cat and dog in the school and gave them names. Whenever I went home during holidays, I always happened to miss the time when Snow was there. And I would go back to my hometown during the spring festival. So for a whole 4 years, we didn't meet even once. We met again at a class reunion 4 years later. 4 years can change a lot of things. The once young and innocent boys and girls had now become mature and steady. They talked about their plans for the future, shared the competitions they had participated in, and exchanged the job offers they had received. They all had the halo of famous universities on their heads and held countless awards in their hands. Although they hadn't yet stepped into society, their futures were promising. Because of the traffic jam, I arrived the latest. As soon as I entered the door, they enthusiastically pulled me into the center of the crowd. Due to similar experiences, I also quickly blended into the conversation. Just as I was chatting gracefully with them about my life in the past 4 years, someone suddenly pointed at me and pretended to be angry. Don't you know? In our sophomore year, several universities jointly held a debate competition. Coincidentally, I and Ryan became opponents. At that time, we were beaten by his complete logical closed loop. It was really. We didn't feel the friendship of former classmates at all. I smiled at her. You're too kind. She still didn't let me go and continued to tease. I didn't expect that, Ryan. You used to always be quiet and gentle. On the debate stage, you were surprisingly rational, pressing forward step by step and not giving an inch. I'm very curious. Do you act like this when you quarrel with your girlfriend too? This remark caused a burst of laughter. Then someone suddenly seemed to remember something and turned to look at Snow and asked her, Hey? Why didn't I see Leo? Our pure love warrior, the school grass, didn't come with you. It was only then that I saw Snow, who had been sitting in the corner of the private room and hadn't said a word. Like the others, she had also changed a lot. The humility and confidence that used to be in her eyes had disappeared completely. How should I put it? Although she was still quiet and introverted, sitting here now, she somehow seemed a bit out of place. It was as if she was an ignored outsider. Those boys and girls who once enviously called her the pure love warrior had already become young people who had received better resources and seen a bigger world. When talking about this topic again, there seemed to be a subtle feeling added. Everyone's words seemed to carry a bit of faint ridicule and the flavor of watching a joke. After all, she used to be the king of strength among these people. Now she didn't even have topics that she could participate in the discussion. Han held a wine glass and sighed softly behind me. Sure enough, reality is reality, different from idle dramas. 4 years later in an idle drama, perhaps it would be the heroine's success after her counterattack. But in reality, the current Snow wasn't prettier or more successful. She couldn't compare to anyone present. After all, a person's success can't be completely attributed to their own efforts. Platform, resources, connections, talent, opportunities, all of these are essential conditions. So Snow, who was famous in the physics world in her previous life, was almost unknown now. I wasn't surprised at all. And Snow, who was suddenly asked, was stunned for a few seconds and then looked at me. She moved her lips and said in a very calm tone, "We broke up." A few days after the party, my good friend Han came to share with me the gossip he had heard about Snow and Leo. Shortly after they entered the school, under Leo's guidance, Snow not only mastered skills like taking photos, photo editing, and selecting sneakers, but she even quarreled with other girls for Leo's sake. I remembered that during that period, I did see on moments that Snow, who used to only occasionally repost physics-related information, would post some photos or videos of Leo every 2 or 3 days. At that time, I thought that true love could indeed change a person. However, when the passionate stage of their relationship ended and they entered the dull stage, Snow began to be busy with her professional courses, and Leo got to know more people in various activities. Occasionally, the two would have differences due to some disagreements. Leo complained that Snow didn't have time to accompany him because of the competitions and frequently asked Snow, who was concentrating on preparing for the competitions, to accompany him to play basketball. And Snow also began to get angry because of Leo's excessive contact with other girls. Minor matters of disagreement that were not too serious piled up more and finally, they ended up in a Cold War. Han became more and more excited as he spoke with a tone carrying a bit of coldness and resentment. How much of the so-called true love in the past was really true and how much was really love? When the novelty wears off, there will only be more and more contradictions. What's more, they not only met more outstanding people, but there was also a real sacrifice on one side in their relationship. Such an invisible bomb only needed a fuse. So when Leo was pursued by a rich, beautiful, and well-off girl, he became more and more dissatisfied with Snow. After all, the biggest halo on her back then was the ranking of the first. But in a bigger world, academic achievements were no longer the only measurement standard. Regarding the fading relationship and Leo's more or less obvious dislike, Snow finally couldn't help mentioning that she gave up the multiple-choice questions of the science comprehensive test for him during the college entrance examination. But all she got was a sarcastic remark from Leo, "For me? Snow, that was your own choice, wasn't it? Don't shift the responsibility onto me just because you're dissatisfied with the result of your choice." Soon they broke up, and Leo got together with the rich, beautiful, and well-off girl without any gap. At this point, a legendary love story labeled with "the most handsome boy in school, the top student, and giving up scores" came to an end. I flipped through the magazine casually and lazily responded to Han's passionate speech, "Oh, I see." He was quiet for a few seconds and then suddenly let out a sigh as if there was something on his mind. To be honest, as a friend who had been in the same class with her for 6 years, I'm really disappointed in her and also feel sorry for her. Even if she had taken the exam seriously and waited for the scores to come out before making a choice when filling in the application form? Did she really have to leave herself no way out? I really want to know if she would regret her choice back then when she thinks about it now. That love for which she could give up scores was only worth 4 years after all. I smiled and said calmly and composedly, it was her own choice. Whether she regrets it or not, no one will bear the consequences for her anymore. However, in my previous life, under her daily resentment and disgust, I really regretted it. At that time, due to studying and working, we lived in the same city and were both in the academic circle, so it was inevitable that we would have various intersections, deep or shallow. After going home, because of our parents, we maintained a superficial harmony and a bit of propriety. But every time we met, I almost always faced her sarcasm. I thought about it, and her hatred for me probably reached its peak when she discovered my secret love for her. I had been in the habit of writing a diary since childhood. Since I spent the longest time with Snow, there was the most content about her in my diary. It recorded that we went climbing together, she helped me, who had sprained my ankle, go home. When I overslept in the morning and was late, she would accompany me to stand as punishment, and when I forgot to bring my book, she handed me hers. We went to the library together on weekends, represented the school to participate in various competitions together, would comfort each other when our rankings dropped in exams, and would also argue endlessly about the solution to a problem. Everything between Snow and me was just trivial and ordinary little things, and there was no experience that would cause great emotional fluctuations. So at first, I didn't realize that I had fallen in love with her. It wasn't until that day when she pointed at the photo on the publicity board and asked me if I had confidence that I belatedly realized that between the lines of each page of my diary in the past, my love for her was revealed. I liked her attitude of striving hard to achieve her ideals, liked the look in her eyes that shone when facing difficulties, and also liked that whenever I was discouraged and had the thought of giving up, she would look at me with a solemn gaze and ask me, "So, are you going to stop here, Ryan?" So that night, for the first time, I wrote in my diary, "Like Snow, I like Snow." But later, Leo appeared and got closer and closer to Snow. After all, I didn't have much contact with him, and the only intersection was Snow, so I only mentioned it once in my diary and wrote one sentence, "Snow, she fell in love with Leo." After that, because of the love letter incident, the relationship between Snow and me became more and more strained. Every argument consumed my love, just as the heartbeat that started without knowing when also ended without a source. I originally thought that my secret love for her would never be known. I didn't expect that when she was called by my mother to help install the newly bought bookshelf, she would see my diary. Even today, I can still clearly remember the sarcastic look in her eyes when she held up the diary and looked at me. She asked me in a cold tone, "Do you like me?" I looked at the diary in her hand, was silent for a moment, and then admitted frankly, "Yes, I liked you." Perhaps my overly calm appearance irritated her a bit. Suddenly, she threw the diary at me vigorously and asked angrily, "So you took away that love letter?" The hardcover page scratched my cheek, and it hurt a bit. It was at this moment that I suddenly realized that actually, I didn't like her anymore. Facing the past that contained my heartbeat and was casually thrown away by her, I didn't feel sad at all. I just picked up the diary that had fallen on the ground, wiped it, and seriously apologized to her. "I'm sorry, Snow. I shouldn't have taken away that love letter. I shouldn't have delayed your fate. And I shouldn't have liked you without permission." She was still not satisfied. She turned her head, snorted softly, and then turned around and left, leaving behind the words that I still remember vividly. Jealous and vicious-hearted. To be honest, although I liked her back then, compared to that shallow love, what I cherished more was the friendship of walking side by side. So the purpose of taking away the love letter was never to prevent her from being with Leo. I just hoped that she could get the grades that matched her efforts in the past 12 years without being affected. Therefore, I just delayed the choice she faced for a few days. And I had never been jealous of Leo. I had always understood that feelings couldn't be forced. So if she and Leo had gotten together, I would have sent my blessings. And then continued to move forward on my own path. I didn't have to be with Snow. Now, it can be regarded as correcting the wrong track in my previous life back to the right direction and walking on the path that I should have taken originally. However, although I didn't take away that love letter again after getting a second chance, I didn't deliberately alienate Snow in this life either. At least before the college entrance examination, everything was the same as in my previous life. It's just that after that, we had lived in different circles for 4 years, so from the time we met at the party until it ended, we didn't even have a conversation. This gradually drifting apart relationship actually had no impact on me, so I didn't take the initiative to find her to ease the situation, until her mother was hospitalized due to illness. I was taken by my mother to visit. After putting down the fruits we brought, I sat down in the ward full of the smell of disinfectant. I listened to the chat between my mother and Snow's mother about daily trifles for a while. Then I went outside to answer a phone call, and when I went back, I met Snow beside the flower bed. She was wearing a black coat, with an ineradicable look of tiredness and annoyance between her brows, and there was half a lit cigarette between her fingertips. Such a familiar look made me stunned for a moment. In my previous life, when she was blocked in her research project or when she was trying hard to win Leo back but couldn't get what she wanted, she had exactly this look. At that time, although she was extremely glorious, she still made unknown efforts behind the scenes. The academic path was tough and lonely after all. As for winning Leo back, Snow actually went to find him after achieving certain achievements and did re-establish contact with him. However, at that time, almost all of Snow's connections, resources, and social circles were in the city where the university was located, and she spent most of her time in the laboratory. So compared with those rich, beautiful, and well-off girls who also pursued Leo and had both money and leisure time, her advantage was not big. Finally, after she had been showing her kindness for half a year, Leo still rejected her and made a perfect exit from her life. Since then, the bright moon hung high in the sky, and he was never within her reach again. And the charge that I took away the love letter to prevent them from being together accompanied me all my life. After all, in her opinion, if she had been in the same school as Leo and had always been with him back then, the ending would definitely have been different. Now, looking at her sitting here, I don't know why she showed such an expression again. The moment our eyes met, she panicked a bit and stubbed out the cigarette between her fingers. Then she stood up and walked towards me. Her voice was hoarse after smoking, a bit dry. "We didn't have time to say hello last time we met, Ryan. You've changed a lot. You've become more handsome and outstanding." After a pause, she seemed a bit guilty and apologized to me. "I was immature back then. Because I was worried that he would misunderstand and that our relationship would be affected. I classified our relationship as that of ordinary friends. It was indeed my fault." I quietly waited for her to finish speaking and then smiled at her with a calm state of mind and responded generously, "It's okay, Snow. We were originally ordinary friends. Otherwise, what else could our relationship be?" Her expression froze slightly and then became gloomy. Then she looked at the setting sun that was gradually disappearing on the horizon, laughed at herself, and said with a sense of loss, "Actually, I've thought about it countless times later. What would it be like if I hadn't seen that love letter back then?" I continued following her words and said in a rather light tone, "No, the love letter was placed there, and it was impossible for you not to see it." Suddenly, she turned her head to look at me. "What if someone took it away?" I was stunned for a moment. Before I could say anything, I heard her ask again, "Ryan, if you had seen it in advance, would you have taken it away?" I carefully looked at her eyebrows and eyes, trying to find something, but there was nothing. So I calmly shook my head. "No, I wouldn't have taken it away." We looked away from each other in silence. Suddenly, she smiled, as if she finally breathed a sigh of relief, and said several times as if she was relieved, "That's good, that's good." Then she said again, "After breaking up, I always had the same dream over and over again. I dreamed that in the year of the college entrance examination, you took away the love letter in advance, and finally, I didn't end up with him. And I hated you all my life. And finally, we died in a car accident caused by me." The warmth of the blood was so real, as if it had really happened. I hummed and planned to return to the ward and said gently to her, "It's all fake. Don't worry about it." But I knew that it was true. The car accident happened on the day of Leo's wedding. Before that, we were invited back by our high school alma mater to participate in the Alumni Association. Our former head teacher asked us to shoot a growth-themed video with the theme of "Always on the Road" for our junior schoolmates to watch. Just like that, I got into Snow's car and chose a shooting route. Later, according to the script prepared in advance, I sat in the passenger seat, adjusting the equipment while communicating with Snow about the shooting angle. It was a long-awaited peaceful coexistence since the college entrance examination. The shooting went very smoothly. On the way back, I quietly leaned against the car window, stopped talking, and just watched the scenery passing by outside the window. Then I heard Snow's cell phone suddenly ring. She subconsciously pressed the hands-free button in the car to answer the call. In the next second, Leo's clear voice came out, "Snow, today is my wedding. I forgot to send you an invitation. We've known each other for so many years and are all friends. I'll send you the time and place on your cell phone later." With the sound of hanging up the phone, the inside of the car fell silent. I was thinking about saying that I would take a taxi back by myself at this point when she suddenly turned the car around. I knew that she still wanted to go. But unfortunately, we didn't make it. Because in the next second, our car was hit by a truck. The feeling of internal organs being displaced was really painful. But after the pain became numb, my feeling was actually relief. Before losing consciousness, I first heard Snow weakly call Ryan a few times, and then came the sentence that if we could start over, she begged me not to destroy the fate between her and Leo again. When I opened my eyes again, I went back to not long after the beginning of the first year of high school. I didn't know what Snow's "that's good" and the recurring dreams meant. But it didn't matter anymore. The second time I met Snow was on the day her mother was discharged from the hospital. I went to deliver the cooked soup for my mother. Then I chatted with her for a while and listened to her recall the past. She took out the old paper photos, picked up a group photo of me and Snow after winning a junior high school competition, and said, "How time flies. Back then, when your mother and I were waiting to give birth, we lived in the same ward. You were born just 3 days later than Snow. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 years have passed. Ryan, you're still as gentle as you were when you were a child. Snow's father liked you so much back then. He held you in his arms, and you didn't cry or make noise. You just knew how to smile quietly. Later, when you grew up a bit, you and Snow were always together. We adults even said that you two would definitely be together when you grew up." I smiled gracefully and followed her words, "Auntie, those were just things in childhood. They don't count." She patted my hand and sighed, "It's Snow who doesn't have this good fortune. Now the gap between you two is getting bigger and bigger. She's not worthy of you anymore." I smiled gently. "I originally wanted to say that this idea was wrong, Auntie. There's no such thing as being worthy or not. What's important is whether two people are on the same path." She probably misunderstood what I meant and said to me, "I heard Snow say that she's preparing for the postgraduate entrance examination. The school is the target university she aimed at during the college entrance examination. Coincidentally, it's also in the city where you went to university." By then, I interrupted her gently, "Auntie, I'm going to study abroad. Also, I already have a girlfriend. I haven't had time to tell my parents yet." Just then, Snow came back from outside and went into the kitchen to wash her hands. We were sitting on the sofa in the living room. I didn't know if she had heard it, but she stood there quietly with her back to me. She didn't move for a long time. The air was silent for a few seconds. Perhaps to ease the atmosphere, Snow's mother asked about my girlfriend. I smiled and talked about how I met her. "She's a girl who participated in competitions with me. She's gentle, sober, modest, and self-disciplined. She's studying for a consecutive master's and doctoral degree, winning national awards every year, and winning prizes in various competitions she participated in. She can do calligraphy, play chess, and play the drums." Then I opened my cell phone and found a photo of her giving a speech at an academic forum. After showing it to her, I said, "She's the person I like very much and also my fellow traveler." The topic ended there. Later, on my way back, I inexplicably thought of Snow standing in front of the sink, rolling up her sleeves. There were faint scars on her forearm. It was the washed-off tattoo. Suddenly, it was like time was intertwined. The name that was crossed out countless times on the draft paper but was still obvious was the signal of the beginning of her relationship with Leo. Now, the faint tattoo on her arm has become the symbol of the end of their relationship. The hormones that burst out suddenly in that youth finally receded like the tide. The entanglement between me and Snow basically ended here. Once upon a time, I was really looking forward to the fate she would face after choosing another path. I wanted to know how she would reach the height of her previous life in a situation where every upward channel is now full of countless competitors. I also wanted to know how the family that had spent countless efforts to cultivate her for more than 10 years would support her to pursue her dreams again. I have to admit that I just hoped to see that she wouldn't live well on this path to prove that my actions in the previous life were correct. But I also knew that I had indeed made a mistake. There is a sentence in Dickens' The Mystery of Edwin Drood, "The best courtesy is minding your own business." Once you interfere, you have to take responsibility. So this time, I put myself in the right position and didn't interfere with any of Snow's choices without permission. In the previous life, she regretted not being with Leo. I don't know if she will regret the 21 multiple-choice questions she gave up in this life. However, the wonder of fate lies in the fact that there is never the best choice. No matter which one you choose, there will be regrets. What's important is to bear the consequences of your choices. And now I'm no longer interested in the fate of Snow in this life. After all, life is so long. From now on, whether she makes a comeback against the odds and returns to the peak or stops here and becomes an ordinary person, it has nothing to do with me. I stopped looking back and continued to move forward. During the 3 years of studying abroad, my girlfriend and I were in a long-distance relationship. When Han called me, he smiled and teased me, "Ryan, you'll be away for 3 years. Aren't you afraid that your relationship with your girlfriend will fade?" While I was rushing to meet the deadline, I replied calmly, "Although my girlfriend and I are not in the same place, we are working towards the same goal. Our souls will only get closer and closer." He made an ambiguous tisk sound and then changed the topic as if he had thought of something. "Do you still remember Leo? He was courted by a newly rich man who fell in love with him at first sight and spent a lot of money on him. His wedding was really grand. He invited a large group of former classmates and received countless envious looks. Unfortunately, less than 2 years later, the newly rich man got tired of him and met a younger, more handsome, and talented man. So he pursued him as usual by spending money. After Leo made a big fuss when he was cheated on, the result was that the newly rich man wanted a divorce. He didn't agree, and now they are still stuck in the divorce process." I listened casually and suddenly found that Leo's face had gradually become blurred in my mind. Besides remembering that he was quite handsome, I couldn't recall other deep memories. Even when he was in love with Snow back then, he didn't seem special in my eyes. I had never regarded him as a competitor. After all, we had always been people from 2 different worlds from the beginning to the end. Probably seeing that I wasn't very interested, Han stopped mentioning him and instead said, "Snow was failed in the postgraduate entrance examination twice, just 0.1 points short each time. What bad luck." Finally, after I finished meeting the deadline, I let out a long sigh and replied indifferently, "Oh, then I wish her good luck." One day not long after that, I suddenly received a message that was withdrawn. It was sent by Snow. But I didn't ask about it either. Until I returned to China, my former friends held a welcome banquet for me. Snow, who came along, asked me if I had seen that message. I shook my head and said that I was sleeping in the middle of the night. She smiled wryly and explained, "I had a fragmented dream and mistook the dream for reality. I'm glad I didn't disturb you." I maintained a friendly smile and suddenly felt that I had told a very clumsy lie. It was daytime for me when she had the dream at midnight. But it didn't matter anymore, just like the withdrawn message, "Ryan, you liked me, didn't you?" The answer didn't matter anymore. What's important is that now I will go further and further on my own path, and my lover is right in front of the path. Looking at her thin and lonely back as she took a deep look at me and then turned around and left, my girlfriend came over with a small cake in her hands and asked me softly who that was. I withdrew my gaze, held her hand, and smiled casually, "An ordinary friend I've known since childhood."